Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for today's card. Today's card uses the My Favorite Things Happy Pandas set. I've used it a few times before, just so adorable. I'm going to be coloring them with Copic markers. I'm also going to be using this Brush Strokes background stamp by Stampin' Up! And also these Little Bee heart dies. It comes in a magnetic folder. It's got 11 dies in it, and the nice thing is it has several outline hearts, so if you don't want the stitching you don't have to use it, and the stitching comes in its own separate die, so you can actually use the stitching without cutting anything. I did a lot of research before buying these dies. I'm really happy with them. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is take some pink Pirouette ink by Stampin' Up! And I'm going to ink up my Brush Strokes background. It's kind of gives you a watercolor effect with just ink. I've got a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and you'll find that this is actually the first video that I'm creating in my temporary craft room before I move into my new house. So I'm playing with the lighting a little bit until you see kind of shadows. I'm not sure there's much I'm going to be able to avoid, but anyway, I'm trying to make it as great as I can. Anyway, so I'm going to take this heart die and I'm going to place it horizontally on this piece of cardstock, and I'm going to run it through my Big Shot. I'm going to place it a little bit higher than center so that I have some space at the bottom to put the sentiment. Next, I'm going to start working on my pandas. I am going to put them both on an acrylic block so I can stamp them both at the same time. I'm stamping them in Memento Tuxedo Black ink because it works great with Copic markers. And I'm going to get my markers. I'm using W1, W3, and 0. These are warm gray colors. I'm going to start by using my W3 and just outlining the edges and right underneath his neck where there would be a shadow from his head. And just along the edges, and then I'll take the W1, and this is very simple coloring. I'm just blending the line of the W3, and that's really all I'm doing. I'm going to do that on the top and the bottom here, and color a little bit more on the edge. And then finally I'm going to take my 0 and I'm just going to go over the whole entire thing, and you can see how it just completely softens those lines, and it really makes it look like a nice warm cozy bear. So I'm just going all the way around the whole thing, and then I'll do the exact same thing on the other bear. You can see I'm not spending a whole lot of time doing all this special shading. I'm just getting some dimension in here so that they pop a little bit on my card. I'm not worried about going outside the lines because I'm going to be cutting them out. So I'm finally going over this with my 0, and then I'll call it done. There are dies that come with this set, but I don't have them, so I'm just going to cut mine out with a scissor. So when I finish cutting, I'm just going to put these off to the side and start working on other things. I'm going to take this heart from the Owl Punch. I use this heart all the time. It's just the perfect size heart. I have a piece of American Crafts red glitter paper, and I'm just going to punch that out, and then I'll take my larger panda, the one who's standing up, and I'm going to take a 2-way glue pen, just tap on his hand, and then I'll use my tweezers to place this heart right on his hand. So he's kind of handing a heart. Just a little nice added detail for the card. And then I'm going to work on the background. So I am going to take that piece that I cut the heart out of and put it on top of my card base, which is a piece of folded Nina 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to take a pencil. I'm just going to draw some dots inside this line, and I'm really just creating a border, like a guide for my leaves. I'll remove that and I'll start. I'm going to use 3 different colors. There are a couple of bamboo stamps that come with this set, like leaves, and I'm just going to use that to stamp all around this heart based on the pencil marks that I made. The first ink I'm using is Simon Says Stamp Green Leaf, and I'm just randomly putting them around this heart. Next, I'm going to move on to the Green Apple ink, and I'm going to do the same thing. It's just nice to have different shades of green, so any kind of shades that you have would work, just a dark, a light, and a medium. So again, randomly around the heart, and then finally I found that this color works really well with the other two. It's like a yellowy green. It's called Lemongrass. It's Avery L. It's a pigment ink, so I'm going to do it last. So I'm going to move that all the way around my heart to fill in all the gaps, and I'll take my heart and see if it fits. I found that there was a little bit of a gap on the left hand side, so I just grabbed my green leaf ink again and I just filled in the gap. And I checked it one more time and it looked good. So now moving on to the sentiment, I'm stamping it in some Versamark ink on some black Stampin' Up! Cardstock. It's my favorite black cardstock to use. And then I'm going to white emboss this so that it pops. And it adds a little bit of extra black to the card since I have the black panda. This sort of balances it out that way. I'll take a pencil and I'm going to mark a circle on each side of the sentiment. And then I'll grab my Stampin' Up! Pierce mat. It's just a large piece of very firm foam. You could try, I've heard people using a mouse pad for this purpose, but it allows you to kind of poke your paper piercer in there and hold your paper straight. So I'm going to put my paper piercer through these dots that I made with my pencil. I'm going to really work it around to make the dots a little larger so that it'll fit my linen thread. I'm going to thread it from the back to the front, and then I will double knot it in the front, so twice doing this knot. And I'm not going to make it too tight so that it stays pretty thick. So I'm going to do this twice, and this will show up on the front of the sentiment. So what I'll do is I'll pull the thread from the back, and you'll see it tighten right at the front. And then I'm just going to trim off the edge here with enough space to wrap around the panda. And I'll do that same exact thing on the other side. And I found that the paper piercer had made a hole that was just perfect for threading the linen thread. And then I went ahead and cut off in front of the knot so that I didn't have too much thread hanging out. So just about like 1/8 of an inch past the knot. And now I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to my bottom panda on the front because he's going to be adhered on the front. I'll also add a little bit to his arms just to get him positioned for the linen thread to go behind him so I know where to put it. So I'm going to place him right here at the bottom. I'll put his arms in the front and his body in the back so he's kind of hanging over the heart. And then I'm going to take my sentiment and I'll put some dimensionals on the back. So these foam adhesive little circles from Stampin' Up! Are really handy. On the edges I like to cut them so I end up with kind of a half dimensional. I cut 4 of them and I'll just put them right across my sentiment. They're the perfect size. And then I'm just going to pull my thread out so I can make sure I have the same distance on the left and the right of my sentiment. And then I'll press down. And then I can grab my linen thread and pull it to the back. So I'm going to add a little bit more adhesive so it has something to stick to. And then I'll pick up the panda and I'll put it right underneath his arm and press down. And then I'll do that same exact thing on the other side. So it looks like he's holding the sentiment sign. Press it and then I can trim the edges on the back. And then I'm going to take my panel and I'm going to put some Scotch foam tape all along the back. There was also some other areas that I just added some dimensionals just to fill in the area, and it's about the same height. And now I'm going to adhere this panel to my card base using the Misty corner just to make it easy. So I get them both lined up in the corner and then press down. And then I'll add my other panda. I just put a couple of or 3 Stampin' Up! Dimensionals on him, and then I put him right on the top so his feet are overlapping just a little bit on the bottom panda's head. And that is the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.